In the early 1960s, America's space program wasn't just about beating the Soviets to the moon. Beneath the headlines, satellites were being launched for reasons no civilian agency would ever admit. One of them was Project ECHOFRAME, a classified orbital platform said to be capable of intercepting foreign military communications in real time. In 1964, the satellite vanished from orbit after transmitting a single, corrupted data burst. The incident was buried, and the program officially terminated. But 59 years later, in 2023, a deep space antenna in the Australian outback received a signal on a frequency no one had used in decades. And the call sign matched a satellite that was never supposed to exist. I worked at Vandenberg Air Force Base in the summer of 1964. My job title was vague: Data Systems Specialist, Surveillance Support Division. In reality, I monitored incoming telemetry from classified orbital payloads. We weren't told everything. Most of us didn't want to know. But one assignment still won't leave me alone, even 6 decades later. It was called Project ECHOFRAME. Officially, it didn't exist. On internal logs, it was just another satellite test. Something about low-orbit data relay and atmospheric bounce experiments. But everyone in that room knew it was a listening device, a massive one. The satellite used a new antenna array we'd never seen before. Something to do with spatial echo resonance, picking up foreign broadcasts off the ionosphere. We were told it could hear things that ground-based arrays couldn't. That was enough for me to stop asking questions. It launched at 02:47 a.m. July 11th from pad LC3. No media coverage, no announcement. Within an hour, it was in low Earth orbit, running its first pass over the Pacific. Everything looked good. Clean signal, consistent rotation, minimal drift. On its third pass, over eastern Russia, it sent back a compressed telemetry burst. That's when things got weird. The data packet came through corrupted, but not in a way we were used to. It wasn't static or garbled code. It was deliberate, structured. Inside the burst were a set of coordinate pairs that didn't match any known latitude-longitude formats. And embedded beneath the signal was a tone, a low, pulsing hum that shifted pitch every 13 seconds. We had never received anything like it before. We flagged the anomaly and prepped for a return signal. But before we could initiate the next pass, the satellite disappeared. No decay, no re-entry. One moment it was tracked over the Aleutian Islands, and the next, nothing. It didn't blow up. It just wasn't there anymore. 2 hours later, men in unmarked uniforms showed up. Suits, not fatigues. They locked down the comms room, confiscated the reels, and told us we were now part of post-test clearance protocol. We were separated, debriefed, and each given sealed envelopes. Contracts swearing us to silence under Executive Order 10,613. They didn't even tell us the name of the agency they worked for. Only that ECHOFRAME never launched, and we were mistaken. They said the satellite burned up during an early-stage malfunction and never reached orbit. But I saw it with my own eyes. And I read the data myself. They reassigned me to a radar outpost in Alaska 3 weeks later. Cold, quiet, far away from everything. That was the point. I never spoke about ECHOFRAME again. Not until now. Because last month, my grandson, who works in defense tech, forwarded me something. A signal burst, captured from an old antenna array in the Australian desert. He said they weren't sure what it was, but it matched a 1964 satellite signature. The name on the header was clear: ECHOFRAME-1. Mark Dalloway wasn't supposed to be working that day. He was semi-retired, an old systems tech who'd spent 3 decades calibrating antenna arrays for CSIRO, Australia's science agency. But an intern had botched a firmware update at the Murchison radio quiet zone, and Mark was the only one nearby who still remembered how to manually cycle the old feeds. So he drove out, logged in, and let the systems run. At first, it was routine. The dish was sweeping archived military bands, mostly Cold War junk, frequencies no one used anymore. But at 13:42 local time, something pinged back. It wasn't strong, just a soft pulse. Once, then again, 13 seconds later. Mark thought it was an echo or bleed-through. Then he saw the call sign in the data header: EF1_03.cycle2. His heart skipped. He didn't know what project ECHOFRAME was, but the metadata flagged the signal as originating from geosynchronous orbit from a non-active relay source last catalogued in 1964, which should have been impossible. At first, Mark figured it was a spoofed packet, maybe a stray comms test or an old Russian probe mimicking outdated signatures. But when he decrypted the payload, something didn't make sense. There were GPS coordinates embedded in the signal, modern ones, with precision timing tags and updated formatting. He plugged them into his laptop. The first pointed to northern Alaska, near a decommissioned radar station. The second was a location in the South China Sea, not land, just ocean. The third was in the Great Salt Lake Desert, Utah. He looked again at the time code. It was stamped May 12, 2023, just 2 days earlier. Then there was the tone. The exact same low-frequency hum that had confused the base staff in 1964. Now back, but longer. Mark isolated the waveform. The structure wasn't random. There were layers, repeating patterns buried deep in the tone, like some kind of digital nesting doll. He ran a Morse filter. A short string appeared in dots and dashes. Cycle 2. Then, awaiting return. That's when he called a friend, someone in defense signals based in Canberra. He explained what he'd found and sent over the files. The response was fast, too fast. Within 48 hours, Mark's building access badge stopped working. His email was frozen. When he went home, there were 3 black SUVs parked outside his house. No logos, no plates. They didn't knock. They waited until he left for groceries and entered the home while he was gone. He never saw the men again, but he knew what they were looking for. He called his grandson, the same one who'd sent the original message to that Cold War veteran in Alaska. He asked a single question. "Did they tell you where that last signal pointed?" The grandson said yes. "Utah," he replied, "somewhere in the Salt Flats. But there's nothing there." Mark paused. Then he said, "That's not true. Something's answering, and I don't think it's done." They called themselves Bureau Field Group 6. No agency name, no insignia. Just gray jumpsuits, 2 trucks, and 1 unmarked drone van. Their destination was a 12-kilometer stretch of dry terrain in northern Utah, just west of Promontory Point, on the edge of the Great Salt Lake Desert. To anyone flying overhead, it looked like nothing. But when they pulled satellite recon from the last 48 hours, something had changed. There was heat distortion coming from beneath the ground, perfectly spaced, like a grid. The spacing was too precise to be natural. Their drone LiDAR confirmed it. Beneath the salt crust was a rectangular structure, roughly the size of a football field, buried under 8 feet of compacted soil. No roads, no ventilation shafts, no visible entrance, until they found the hatch. It was half buried behind a natural dune, rusted to hell, with Department of Defense markings dating back to the Eisenhower era. There was no listed facility in the region, no record of construction, but the hinges were military spec, and the padlock had been cut recently. 2 agents went in first. Beneath the hatch was a staircase, steep, narrow, and shockingly well preserved. They expected mold, collapse, maybe groundwater damage. What they found was something else entirely. A radio room, 1960s-era equipment, dozens of consoles, all arranged in a semicircle facing a single monitor at the far wall. Dust covered everything, not a footprint in sight. But one of the consoles had power. A faint glow from a backup capacitor bank still holding charge after all these years. On the center screen, a symbol looped in grainy green phosphor. A ring, broken on one side, with the letters EF-1 inside. And beneath it, Cycle 2, Standby. Then, without warning, the tone started. Low, mechanical. The same pitch shift every 13 seconds. The team froze. They knew that tone. The lead tech checked her handheld spectrum analyzer. The signal wasn't local. It was being received, not generated. A voice came over their comms headset, one of the analysts up top. We've got a problem. You're not going to believe this." The radar truck had picked up a new object, roughly the size of a small car, moving east to west over Nevada airspace. Altitude, 200 miles. Speed, consistent with orbital velocity. Shape, unknown. The object was broadcasting a single digital signature, EF1_03.cycle3. ECHOFRAME was back in orbit. The agents inside the bunker turned back to the console. The monitor had changed. Now it showed 3 sets of coordinates. The first 2 matched the ones from Australia and Alaska. The third was their own location. It was flashing red. A countdown began. No one spoke. Just 5 numbers ticking down in real time. Then, the tone shifted. A second layer faded in underneath. It wasn't Morse. It wasn't digital. It sounded almost like a voice, repeating something over and over, modulated to the point of distortion. But one of the team swore he could make it out. Just one word: cycle. Then the monitor cut to black. I don't know what ECHOFRAME was really built to listen to, or who, or what it's waiting for. But I don't think it ever stopped listening, and I think Cycle 3 has already started. The truth is buried deeper than you think. Like and subscribe to help us dig it up.